one final coffee house mojito to cap off my time here in Yerevan. I've enjoyed being here in Yerevan in Armenia a lot, but what I'm most excited for right now is to keep moving. So tonight, going to Iran, the adventure continues.
An adventure was exactly what I got, because after leaving Yerevan, I was in for some tough traveling. This is part 2 of traveling from Frankfurt to Singapore overland. Do check out part 1 for the decisions that brought me to this point. But anyway, back to Yerevan. There is a bus that connects Yerevan and Tehran, the capitals of Armenia and Iran respectively, and on August 30th, I went to the Yerevan bus station expecting to get on this bus. It's 24 hours long, so I was already mentally prepared for an ordeal, but what I got in the next 24 hours was nothing like I could have imagined. So the bus never showed up, and while the other passengers and the bus company were arguing in the office, I was starting to get a little nervous as I had no idea what they were saying. But again, almost like divine intervention, there was an English teacher on this bus and he made me feel very safe.
Okay, the thing is, I'm gonna fix you, man. You're not gonna pay any penny.
Amazing.
So we got a refund for the bus ticket and the bus company got us a taxi to the border, and they assured us that there would be a bus waiting there for us to take us all the way to Tehran. Now, it was 8 hours driving through windy roads in complete darkness and packed into this small SUV taxi with almost no breathing room. So the other guy next to me threw up twice, and I was holding on to Leo for dear life. Once we got to the border, Leo wished me good luck and split off as his final destination was the border town, and I went to cross immigration by myself.
I gotta be a little discreet about filming. We are here at the Mekri border. This is what the border looks like. To walk 2 kilometers and we'll be in Iran.
It was pretty anticlimactic actually. The border guards didn't even give me a second look, and in less than 15 minutes I was stamped into Iran. After getting across the border, it was another challenge trying to figure out the bus situation, but with a little help from 2 atomic physicists, we ended up on some bus. At this point, it was 6 in the morning and I had not gotten any sleep through the night, so I knocked out on the bus and was shaken awake in Tabriz by those 2 physicists that helped me out at the border. I was so groggy and disoriented that I blindly followed them somewhere, and we ended up in a taxi to Tehran. I'm very thankful that I had some local chaperones here because I could not have figured this stuff out by myself, and as I would soon find out in the rest of my time in Iran, being a foreigner here affords you many privileges, and the Iranian people will go out of their way to make you feel welcome in their country.
We are in Zanjan. Yes. Apparently they're bringing me to change money here in Zanjan. I'm not sure why we're doing this here instead of in Tehran, but I'm just following these people because I have no other option. My 2 chaperones took very good care of me, but that didn't change the fact that I was in this taxi for 10 total hours with very little sleep, almost suffocating from all the exhaust coming in through the windows. So once we finally arrived in Tehran, I was very thankful for their help, but also very happy to bid them goodbye. It is 6:30 right now here in Tehran, 7 p.m. Yerevan time, which means it's been 25 hours since I left Yerevan. I was just dropped off by the taxi in God knows where. Alright vlog, it is my first day here in Tehran in Iran. It's the 1st of September and it is really hot right now, which is why I'm stopping for a juice. I am here in the Baharistan Square, right near where my hostel is, and the city is already really overwhelming. So I'm just gonna sit here for a little bit, and I'm meeting up with a friend that I met on couch surfing. So we're gonna go walk around together, which is gonna be really nice because I do not have internet on this phone. After a thrilling welcome into the country the previous day, I found myself safely in the Lion's Den in Tehran, the capital of Iran. Back in Istanbul, my German colleague Andre first introduced me to the Couchsurfing app, and many other Iranians that I'd met along the way also recommended me to use this here as the community is extremely active in the country. And true enough, once I registered myself and got on the app, I was overwhelmed with people sending me messages, eager to meet foreigners and to interact with the outside world. So in my first morning in Tehran, I hopped on Couchsurfing and found someone who was down to meet right away, and within 45 minutes of sending that text, Z came to meet me right outside my hostel. I spent the entire day with her, and she brought me to an art museum and out to eat. But my lasting memory of my time with Z, and really my entire time in Tehran, was this story that she told me and the afternoon that I spent talking with her about her life in Iran.
We were walking down the street when all of a sudden she threw her headscarf on and she turned to me and said under her breath, "There's police over there." I asked her, "Is he gonna arrest you if you don't have your headscarf on?" And she said, "No, but he might. I've gotten arrested before." And that shocked me into silence. After walking some more, Z asked if I wanted to go see her home, and I could not say no to this opportunity, so we got on the metro out to the suburbs. When we got to an interchange stop to change trains, she pulled me out and said, "This is our stop." And she laughed and said again, "It's also where I got arrested." She told me she was walking out of the train station one day without her headscarf, and a woman came up to her and asked for directions. She stopped to pull her phone out, and without even any time to think, the woman grabbed her and threw her into a van. I said, "It was a woman?" And she said back, "Men can't touch girls in Islam." Her mom had to come to the police station and cry, begging them to release her. This was a really heavy story, and the way she said it so casually has really stuck with me. Once we got to our final stop, she brought me to her house. I met her mother and brother, and of course, out of respect, I didn't film. But after a small meal, she brought me out again to one of her favorite spots in the city.
Going on an adventure.
Do you want to play an Iranian song?
Sure, yes. Your favorite Iranian song, so I can put it in my playlist.
In the car, she played me her favorite song, and this quickly became my favorite song as well that I heard on my entire trip.
هجرت اوج صدامو از فراز شاخ آبی ای زلال سبز جا.
I met lots of other cool people on couchsurfing in Tehran, and while I wish I could have stayed longer, I only had 14 days visa free, so I had to move on in order to have enough time to get out of the country. But there'd be no shortage of meaningful interactions, and I'd meet some more cool people in Isfahan.
Iran, beautiful. Thank you, Singapore.
Thank you very much.
Singapore.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, very much.
Thank you, Singapore.
On my first day here, I met Faye in my hostel. She's from Shiraz and here on vacation with her friends, and she invited me to spend the day with them. The next day, I met Kai, a Chinese tourist who spoke zero English, and so I quickly became his translator. And worlds collided when Kai followed me down to Shiraz to meet Faye. I have so many more stories to tell from these few days, meeting a Chinese-Iranian couple, riding in a car bomb with the Taliban, meeting an imam at a holy shrine, but these will have to wait for its own video in the future, or maybe find its way into a book, inshallah.
Your lens is dirty. اومده چشم ما گرفته و ما قرار باش ببریمشون تخت جمشید.
تخت جمشید.
Persepolis.
On the 9th of September, Faye brought me and Kai to Persepolis, which was a big highlight for me on this trip of mine. See, back in Europe, I first learned of Alexander and his great conquests, and I even made it out to Macedonia. And I'll save the history lesson in this video, but I loosely followed Alexander's path from Macedonia deep into the Persian Empire to here. And it was very powerful to me that I'd come all this way from Macedonia over the past 3 or so months with modern conveyances, but it took Alex 6 years on foot conquering all the enemy territory in his path.
For me, it is just so amazing to feel like Alexander was right here. He destroyed all of this.
Standing in Persepolis made me feel very insignificant, but it also gave me a sense of accomplishment for stepping out of my comfort zone and having the courage to come into Iran and making it this far so far. Before coming here, I was scared of the unknown, and all I knew about Iran was what the Western propaganda machine fed me. But after actually meeting people here and seeing things with my own eyes, I learned that people here just live their lives. It's not any better or worse than the life that I live in the West, it's just different. So the day after seeing Persepolis, I prepared to leave Iran. I did not dare cut it close as my visa-free tourism period was expiring, but 11 days in the country was not enough. Hopefully I will be back one day for longer, inshallah. and I am grateful for everything that I experienced in Iran. But before I left Iran, I was once again presented with many possibilities to head eastward, just like in Istanbul, but this time my options were a little more deadly. Here is round 2 of my favorite game, 3 options eastward. Let me know which option you would have picked in the comments down below. From Iran, my safest and easiest option was Turkmenistan, but once you enter the country, you must be escorted by a tour guide at all times. It's also notoriously one of the most expensive countries to travel in the world, because of these tour package prices, and after shopping around, the cheapest tour that I could find was $500 for 2 nights, which is more than what I'd spent in my entire month in Istanbul, so that was out of the question for me. My next option was Afghanistan, and surprisingly, the country is much safer now that the Americans have pulled out, so safety wasn't really a big concern here, but Afghanistan is one of the only countries in the world that I need a visa for, and since I only had 2 weeks in Iran, I would not have been able to get one in time. So again, out of the question. My third option was Pakistan, which is also much safer than what the news claims it to be, but only in the eastern parts of the country. The western region of Balochistan is filled with religious extremists who are not very welcoming to outsiders, and during the time that I was in Iran, I saw recent reports of roadside killings. So I may be a poor boy, but certainly not foolish, so I found a 4th option, the boat to Dubai. On September 11th, I had the biggest culture shock of my entire life when I left on a boat from the middle of nowhere, Iran, to Dubai, the prodigal son of the Middle East. Going from having no mobile data, no credit cards, and no Western faces anywhere around to arguably the world's biggest shrine to consumerism was jarring, to say the least. And with this decision, I was quite disappointed that I would have to break my overland streak, but it was my safest option, and I was also happy to be back in the comforts of Western society again. I also wasn't here alone, as Kai, whom I met back in Isfahan, followed me here because traveling was very easy for him with me as his professional translator. And I was quite literally professional, as he paid for my time with good food, lots of shisha bars, and more good food. But I did too much living for the plot here, and spending time with Kai somehow got me a free ticket to Egypt with him, which is a side quest that will be explored in a different video.
Yalla habibi.
When I started this overlanding journey in Frankfurt, I could not have imagined I'd end up in Africa, and for free too, but I digress. Short side quest to Egypt aside, I spent 5 total days in Dubai, and I can easily say that this was my least favorite city on my entire trip, as the city felt very sterile, expensive, and the social hierarchy system that the local Arabs have imposed here is a little off-putting. So between my excursions with Kai in Dubai and in Egypt, I began thinking about my next steps. Since I was forced to fly, I wanted to fly the shortest distance possible, and my cheapest option was to Karachi, so on September 25th, I unfortunately got on my first flight since Frankfurt, but I was in for another unexpectedly thrilling journey.
Morning vlog. I just got into Karachi.
The next chapter of this video will take me from one end of Pakistan to the other, from the coast all the way up to the Himalayan border with China. But I will preface this part by saying I already have an hour-long video on Pakistan up on my channel covering everything that I saw along the way, and it was by far the most adrenaline-pumping 2 weeks on my entire trip. So do check that out if you're interested in the details, but here I'll just share my overall experience. I came to Pakistan just because it was on the way out east, so I really had no expectations about the country before coming here. Within my first 24 hours in the country, I was offered multiple cups of tea and free meals, somehow ended up in a Sufi shrine, and met lots of kind people who all wanted to help me. But among all these kind people were many police officers, and in my first 24 hours, I was stopped a total of 4 times. I knew police stops like these were routine, and I didn't think much of them until I noticed a trend that each of them said something about me being Chinese.
They say it's for my own safety, that the intelligence keeps coming up to me. It's like even tighter security than in Iran.
I slowly caught on that there was something underneath the surface about Chinese people in Pakistan, and so I went to do some research. While I was on a train from Karachi up to Lahore, I learned that the Chinese government is very involved in Pakistan since they share a land border, and a lot of economic investment comes in, but at the detriment of the local population. And the underprivileged ethnic minorities suffer most of the environmental and economic consequences, while the richer Punjab majority reap the benefits coming in from the Chinese. This leads to a lot of tension between minorities out east and their Punjabi countrymen, as well as the Chinese, and some of the crazier ones resort to terrorism. And so, being ethnic Chinese myself, I found myself in a bit of a pickle. Now, after learning all this, I didn't necessarily feel unsafe, but rather uneasy, especially with all the extra attention from the police, because all it would really take for me to meet the end was one unfortunate encounter with the wrong person. And since I was traveling alone with no one really to depend on, I decided to just lay low and make it through the country as fast as I could. I barely spent any time in Karachi or Lahore before I booked it to Islamabad, the capital, and here I ran into a different set of political tensions. The day I arrived, half the city's roads were on lockdown because of a citywide protest that would last about a week, and so I was effectively stuck here for a few days. I found a good hostel away from all the commotion, and I hunkered down for a little bit, which was very good rest time for me, and I also got to learn all about the reason behind the protest. I am in a private room tonight, which is fantastic. Pakistan's old Prime Minister Imran Khan was extremely popular among regular citizens, but as political intrigue usually goes, the elites felt he was gaining too much power and threw him in prison. The prison he was being wrongfully held at is near Islamabad, and so there were demonstrations being carried out, with the military being mobilized to keep order. While all of these political tensions sound really stressful, I was actually really fascinated by all of it. I was born in Singapore and I live in America, so I'm very privileged to say that I don't have to live with such crazy politics on a daily basis. All of the history and news that I know is fed to me in a textbook or from a biased media outlet, so actually being in the fray of something and learning something new firsthand was a very valuable experience for me. I met a lot of people in Islamabad, and everyone I talked to was really passionate about Imran Khan, about the ethnic minority situation. They were really knowledgeable on local politics and the state of their country.
There are so many people in the government that they also support such groups who are, disturbing our local people. We are local people. We are also disturbed by these things.
I think that without a doubt, the Pakistani people are the most politically aware, politically active, and invested in their country's future of all the people that I'd met on this trip. But beyond politics, the Pakistanis were also one of the most hospitable people that I met, and the regular people definitely want to overshadow the religious extremists and to de-stereotype the negative perception that the world has of Pakistan. And all the people I stayed with in this hostel in Islamabad really exemplified that, as I felt a feeling of home and comfort here that I had not felt in a long time, in spite of all the stress I felt the previous few days with the religious extremists and Imran Khan demonstrations. Kenny, Kailash, and Waqas took me out to eat a couple times, and I also somehow ended up in church too. So when it came time for me to leave after 5 days of staying in this hostel, I very reluctantly packed up to go, as I wanted to stay here longer with these new friends that I'd met. But I was given an opportunity from Waqas to go up towards the Chinese border on the back of his motorbike, and it was an offer that I could not refuse. Waqas from Pakistan, and he's taking me up the Karakoram highway on this motorbike. I'm very glad that I got to meet Waqas and spend time with him, because going up the Karakoram highway on the back of his bike was an experience that I will never forget.
Take me out tonight, where there's music and there's people and the young and the light. Driving in your car, I never want to go home, because I haven't got one anymore.
I say that this was an unforgettable experience, not just for the pretty views, but also for what went down up in the mountains. Just the day after leaving Islamabad, we had a little hiccup when we almost crashed into a bus, and I flew off the back of the bike.
Oh. Yeah, it's okay.
Wakas and I were both fine, but the local police got involved and we were given a police escort for my safety, as I was a foreigner and Chinese at that. Now, the Karakoram Highway connects Pakistan and China, and so a lot of the Chinese investment comes through here. And like I mentioned a little earlier, there are some crazies out in this part of the country who want to see the Chinese get run out of Pakistan. Long story short, I had the scariest night of my entire trip when I found myself on a bus going up this highway alone, coming face to face with a local fruit vendor at a rest stop, flat out interrogating me 2 kilometers away from where some Chinese workers were suicide bombed just a couple months ago. There are moments in life which you look back on and think, oh, it wasn't that bad. But even now, while I'm sitting at home thinking back to that night, I cannot believe that I made it into and out of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province safe and sound, both physically and mentally. Well, physically, I still have the scar from flying off of Wakas's bike, and mentally, after going through KPK, I know that I can do anything now.
And if a double-decker bus crashes into us, to die by your side is such a heavenly way to die. And if a 10-ton truck
Alright, vlog.
kills the both of us,
After many hours on the road, I finally paid for a private double room. It's for a little comfort tonight. It's my room. It's very nice. I'm still in shock from my little motorbike incident. Oh, I didn't even see this. Look at that. I might have broken my ankle because it's kind of hard to. I can't really put much pressure on it, but I think it'll be fine if I just don't walk on it too much. It doesn't hurt too much. And that was my experience in Pakistan. It was hectic, it was crazy, it was a lot of stimulation over about 2 weeks, but I am really glad that I made it out here. It is by far the most complex place that I have visited, maybe ever in my life. And the people there really made my time so memorable. But it was not all fun and games, and there were times where I legitimately felt unsafe. I think that if Pakistan takes better control over the problems with their religious extremists, there is a lot of potential in the country, and I can see it being in a much better place in just maybe 10 years. But until that day comes, I don't think that I will be going anywhere near that country. After 10 days in Pakistan trying my best to stay out of trouble, I crossed the highest land border crossing in the world and opened another can of worms when I entered the People's Republic of China. In the first week of October, I was finally able to find some rest once I got to China. After going through Iran to Dubai to Egypt and through all of Pakistan, I realized that I had not had proper rest since leaving Yerevan a month before. So I found a cheap place in Kashgar, the first major Chinese city after Pakistan, and called this place home for a week. I'm certainly not the first person to overland from Europe to Asia. People have been doing it for centuries. But of the people in modern times who have done it, all the reports that I've read online say that entering China is the biggest culture shock. For me, being ethnic Chinese, it really wasn't that big of a change, as I had already been speaking so much Chinese along the way here. Coming to Kashgar, though, was a cultural experience in a different way, as I felt like I was stepping into history. The city is 2,000 years old and was one of the biggest trading hubs along the Silk Road, and I have wanted to come here for the longest time after seeing it on a map a while back. I really didn't see much of the city, though, as I was completely drained after all of the past few weeks of traveling. But I spent a lot of time soaking in the neighborhood streets, the comforts of the hostel, and the uniqueness of the Uyghur culture as a minority in China. Since I spent most of my week resting in the hostel, I spent a lot of time with the neighborhood kids, playing card games and watching them enjoy their school holidays. Got a little chaperone with me today, Xiao Balang. I gave this little kid a $1 US bill yesterday, and he still has it with him in his pocket. So
I guess that's all you need to make friends, $1. Here, I also met Reza, a Pakistani businessman who gave me a nice respite from speaking Chinese all day, and I had some really good conversations with him too. But the person I spent the most time with was Ella, the hostel manager, and she really made my time in Kashgar feel like home. She'd make breakfast and tea every day, and I also got to see the behind the scenes of operating a small business here in China. So after 7 days of some good quality rest here, I was reluctant to leave this place, but I was itching to get moving again, and I said another sad goodbye to another slice of home. To this day, I still really miss those quiet neighborhood streets, all of the good food that I had there, and the Silk Road vibes, but I know that at my next opportunity, I will make it back to this corner of the world again. I was pretty excited to head east, as I'd never been to China before, and I was excited to see the more Han Chinese parts of the country. Reza, the businessman whom I'd hung out with here, had already gone ahead to Beijing, so after leaving Kashgar, I headed out there to join him as well. But this meant crossing from one end of the country to the other, or about 60 hours in a sleeper train. While I was pretty intimidated by this at first, Chinese sleeper trains turned out to be really comfortable, and I was also able to check off another long-distance train off of my rail travel bucket list. After 2 nights on overnight trains, I finally arrived in Beijing, and this is where the real culture shock hit. Although I'd already been in China for a week by this point, coming to Beijing felt like again stepping into another world. Culturally, it feels completely different from the western part of China, and here, walking around seeing bubble tea stores, ethnic Chinese food, and familiar brands again made me feel like I'd actually come to East Asia. And the thing that wowed me the most while in Beijing was seeing the Forbidden City. Now, seeing this felt like I was really in China.
The city's not very forbidden if I'm in it.
After all the traveling from Europe and through the Middle East, I felt truly accomplished as I stood in the middle of those palace grounds.
Like, you don't even think about the masses of people here. This place is just, you feel something. Like all the history and
the power. Over the next week, I continued through northeastern China by myself. I made it to the China-North Korea border.
That's North Korea right there. I cannot believe it.
Up to Jilin and to Yanji. Seeing this less frequented part of China was really cool, especially because I wrote a part of my bachelor's thesis on the history of this region, but I wasn't really enjoying it as much as I should have, as traveling through China is pretty exhausting. I can speak Chinese pretty well, but going days without speaking English wore me out slowly, and I started to look ahead again.
保持卫生从我做起. Protecting health starts for me.
It just hits different in Chinese. It sounds so much better. I was itchy to make a trip to South Korea, a place that I have very fond memories of from my younger years. But to do that, I would have to fly there, going against my overlanding goal once again. But as I sat in Yanji and really thought about all the land that I crossed to get here, I told myself that I would really regret not going to Korea, all because of an overlanding goal which already failed when I flew to Pakistan. So with that, I booked a flight to Seoul, my first time back to South Korea in 5 years, and my time here turned out to be some of the most meaningful on the whole trip.
Can you see me? No, you can't. We're here in Hongdae.
We're in Hongdae, that's crazy. My name is Qamar and I'm from Switzerland. We just met. This is the coolest guy I've met.
I'm Jacob from Germany.
We're in Germany.
From Hamburg.
We're both going out to mountain, and it's 2:30 at night right now. I just want to go home and sleep. Today is Thursday, October 24th, and I am in Seoul again. I can't believe that I'm here, honestly. I wasn't really expecting to come here to Seoul this trip, but here I am now. And I am in the exact same spot that I was in when I first came here in March 2019. How many years has it been? It's been 5.5 years since I was last here in Hongdae. It's crazy, absolutely crazy. I'm happy to be back.
And that's exactly how I would feel about being back in Korea again. Crazy nostalgia. South Korea holds a very special place in my heart because back in 2019, I spent 3 months here volunteering and teaching English, which is exactly what inspired me to do the same in Istanbul this trip back in July. So I wanted to come to Seoul and relive my memories from that time in my life, but also to see a couple of friends here. In Seoul, I met up with Junbok, whom I first met back in my university when he came as an exchange student earlier that year.
Thank you, JV. Thank you. Good to see you again, Junbok.
I also met Cayman, who is from my university but on her exchange semester in Seoul. So seeing these two friends really made me slightly homesick for Austin. I also met lots of people in my hostel, and it was such a relief being able to speak English again, but also being able to socialize with backpackers my age again, which I'd sorely missed ever since leaving Europe.
The golden hour. Look at that view. We suffered to get up here though.
And while Seoul was fun, hanging out with both new and old friends in a familiar place, the nostalgia didn't fully flood in until I made it down to Busan. Back in 2019, my volunteering gig was actually in Busan, so Seoul was more of a stopover for me, as it was back in 2019 as well. And in Busan, I revisited those places again, which I'd lived in for 3 months. The language studio I worked at, the dorm I lived in, those same streets I walked down every day, but it felt weird.
When I was here last time, I spent a lot of time here, but it was always with a lot of people. And those people are not here with me anymore, so it feels a little weird that I'm here alone. I don't know.
I felt kind of lost in this place I once called home, as it was home because of the people that I shared the place with, but those people weren't there with me anymore, and it felt empty somehow. And I couldn't shake this feeling because everything was still there, the same way that I left it 5.5 years ago. All the same cafes, same stores, even the same street food stalls were still there. I felt like I was in the same place that 19-year-old me loved, but with 24-year-old eyes and a much more mature brain. And I almost cried when I walked through this park again, as the memories came back from when I did the exact same on New Year's Day 2020. It was the first day of a new decade, and after weeks surrounded with lots of new friends, I found some time to walk through this park alone. I had just turned 20 years old and was faced with a difficult decision to make: which university to attend and what to study. I was also so inspired by the other volunteers at the cafe who left home for a couple months up to a year, and I was tempted too to live life just like them. I remember how scared I was walking down this park back then, of the uncertainty of my life, of all the different paths my life could have taken. And when I compared all of that to the present moment, October 2024, I realized that all of those concerns back then were so trivial now, but only because I'd already overcome them. I ended up at the University of Texas, matured a lot between then and now, and also got to live that dream of being on the road for months at a time. As I walked down this same park again 5 years on, I felt so proud of how far I've come, how much I'd grown since 2019, and I knew that 2019 me would be so proud of 2024 me for everything that I'd done in 5 years. Busan was the climax of this trip for me, where I really got to slow down and see how far I'd come, not only since Frankfurt, but also the years that led up to me going on this trip. It was a perfect culmination point as well, as November was upon me, and I had to start making plans to go home if I wanted to be home for the holidays. So for all of November, re-energized from my time reminiscing in Busan, I went full steam ahead with Singapore in sight.
I'm currently in Busan, South Korea, and I've been sitting in this cafe for the past
couple of hours. We're gonna make it all the way to Singapore within a month. It's currently November 1st, and I hope to be in Singapore on December 1st or thereabouts. And it's about 4,576 kilometers. I only had a month and a lot of distance to cover, so I barely had any time to smell the roses, and it was time to hit the road down to Southeast Asia.
Game start!
Today is November 2nd, currently here in Busan. Today is November 3rd. Tonight we are taking the ferry to Japan. Today is November 4th. We're here in Fukuoka today. We are in Nagasaki today. We are in Kagoshima today. We're back at Family Mart. Here we are. Back in China. I am in Xiamen, China. Hopefully, we're gonna make it to Taiwan. I am in Kinmen today. Today we are heading back to China. We are here in Guangzhou. I am here in Nanning right now. Today is November 17th. We're in Hanoi right now.
The whole month of November, it was a race against time, and I barely got to see anything in each city. I only stopped in each place to rest, but I still met a lot of good people along the way, and whenever I did rest though, I made sure to make the best use of that time.
The game. Are you ready? Cause I'm coming to get you. Get you, get you. Hold on, I'm on my way. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm on my way. Hold on, I'm on my way. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm on my way.
Look what the cat dragged in.
On the 24th of November, after 193 days on the road, I stumbled into Penang, where a friend from home was waiting for me. I first met Chai in university, also this past spring when he came as an exchange student, but what brought us together was us both being Singaporean, and in the last week of November, he came up from Singapore to join me on my final leg home. We spent a week in Malaysia together, going through the Cameron Highlands in Kuala Lumpur. And the closer we got to the end of the week, the closer I had the finish line in sight. But the whole week, I wasn't even thinking about reaching Singapore. I was just enjoying hanging out with a good friend in Malaysia, which felt very familiar since I visited many times during my childhood in Singapore. So, December 1st crept up on me, and before I even knew it, I found myself on a bus down to Singapore, and to the destination I had been aiming towards for 200 days. I was finally going home.
City Square Mall. I've not been here in years. I don't remember this place at all, but City Square Mall. Mashallah. CIQ. Customs and Immigration. I actually haven't been here in so long that this does not feel familiar to me anymore. But we're almost home, and that's all that matters. We're almost there.
When I crossed immigration over my final international border, and I got on the bus to cross the causeway into Singapore, as I had done many times while growing up, I could not help but feel nothing. I was surprisingly very unemotional about everything.
That was very anticlimactic. I'm back in Singapore now. With Chaitanya.
I had come all this way, over 200 days overland from Frankfurt, and I was expecting to feel something. Anything when I crossed back home to Singapore. But that was it. I was home. Over the next few days in Singapore, I spent a lot of time with people, friends, family, all whom I hadn't seen for 3 years since the last time I was in Singapore. But I still couldn't shake this feeling of emptiness. Now, don't get me wrong, I was very happy to see again all these people whom I love and back in a place that I called home. It was nice seeing familiar faces in a familiar place again. And over these few days of catching up with my friends back home and talking about my experiences, it made me realize that I was so empty on the inside because I had spent 200 days chasing this end goal of Singapore, and continually thinking about heading east, about moving on to the next place to put me closer to Singapore. And it took me until I got to Singapore to realize that this feeling of home that I was chasing was not at the end at day 200, but in each and every place that I stopped in and the people I shared those experiences with. As I sat on my floor in Singapore looking back at my whole journey, I realized that I felt most at home with Chai in Malaysia, with my hostel mates in Hanoi, with new and old friends in Korea, with Ella and the kids in Kashgar, in the hostel in Islamabad, in the hostel in Isfahan where I met Faye and Kai, in Georgia and Armenia with Hugo, in Istanbul with Andre and Mirko, Greece, in Ohrid, in Peha with Ollie, Jack and John, Vienna with Parker and McKenna, in Germany with all my friends there, and New York. I had come a long way since leaving Austin on May 17th, but I found a little piece of home every single step of the way.
Morning vlog. Today is Monday, December 9th. It's my last day in Singapore. And I don't know how I feel. I was really tired just catching up with people. But it is my last day here in Singapore. I am leaving for Europe today. And it's about a week until I'm back home in Austin. So just a little bit more traveling to complete off this really long journey from Frankfurt to Singapore, overland, and back again to America. So all my stuff here is packed. All right, I'm gonna head to the airport right now. And it's time to head to Europe.
I had a long week of reflection in Singapore, thinking about all the places I'd been and all the people I'd seen. But the reflection wouldn't stop there. Rather, it continued for another week. It's crazy how life works sometimes, because when shopping for a flight back to Austin, my cheapest route was not over the Pacific, but back to Frankfurt, then New York, then Austin. So while it took me 200 days to overland from Frankfurt to Singapore, it barely took 16 hours to fly over everywhere I'd been to, and I got to go all the way back to where the journey began.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Frankfurt International Airport. Please keep your seatbelt fastened until the seatbelt sign.
On the 10th of December, I found myself back in Germany, and I guess you could say back home again. I started overlanding from here in Germany, and my first week with Samira and all my other UT friends was and still is one of my favorite weeks ever because of all the time we had spent together, just enjoying each other's company. So when I came back again 7 months later to enjoy Samira's and Jakob's company again, it felt just like coming home.
Actually, I sat in this cafe.
And here, surrounded with good friends and good times, I had this quote stuck in my head that was shared with me by a very wise person I met on this trip. It's from a 14th century traveler, and it goes, "Traveling gives you home in 1,000 strange places, then leaves you a stranger in your own land." And there I was, in this strange place, halfway between Singapore and Austin, but I was happy because I felt at home. Back in Austin. I just finished editing this video yesterday, and it feels really weird to be sitting down and doing an end credit scene, but here I am doing an end credit scene. I've said everything that I wanted to say in the video already, so I guess this next part will be me talking about what's next for me, because it seems to be what everyone is asking me these days. It is 2025 already. My big priorities for this year is to find a job, or at least to make some money, and to prioritize my health. These two things I was not doing on this trip. I feel like last year, 2024, was the year for me to make the most of the year. Like my last couple months of undergrad, graduating from UT, and going on this big trip. And I think I was successful. I loved every single moment of last year. But this year, 2025, I do need to take a step back and take life a little slower. Another big goal that I have now that I'm back in Austin is also to write a book about everything that I've experienced on this trip. I shared a lot of my experiences in this video, but there were so many stories that I had to cut out or that I didn't expand on. I would love to write a book, although that takes time. So we'll see if I can find the time and or the motivation to do that. Hopefully a book is in the works. I feel like this big trip was really a way for me to wrap up my youth, and now I'm staring into the abyss of adulthood, which is really scary. And what I did learn on this trip was, after going through KPK, I know I can do anything now. So I'm excited to stare down the abyss, although it is very scary. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching all the way to the end and for following me on this journey too. Goodbye. See you in the next one. Okay, bye-bye.